Hello everyone, HillBilly here today. Hey, I'm going to do a video on some hand stitching. I recently did a video on the simple leather purses, and of course I've did quite a few of them. I left one or two of them here to actually show you a few things, and I was going to do some hand stitching around this for you. And I will also be doing, well, it'll all be saddle stitch. But I'll also do a small piece showing you using the actual awl for doing the saddle stitch, because on the purse like this here, I'm going to have to actually use the pricking irons that I have to create the holes for the stitching. So let's get started. Well, we're doing some of the saddle stitch that we're going to do in this video. I'm going to use a couple pieces of 3 to 4 ounce leather. I'm going to use a set of dividers. I'm going to use the stitching awl. I've got some wax with some other needles that I'd use, but I'm going to use some smaller harness needles. A stitching awl. It's a diamond stitching awl, by the way. It's got a diamond shape on it. These are some stitching chisels or pricking irons. There's different types and different kinds. This one is a 2 millimeter. Between point to point, each one of them it's 2 millimeters. Of course, this is a 4-prong. Then this here is a 2-prong, and then a 1-prong. You can get them a little bit larger, 6 or 8 prongs. Just depends on what all that you want to end up buying. Here's a stitching wheel. This particular one comes from Tandy. The little kit actually had 3 or 4 wheels, and each one of these little wheels have got there's a point for every stitch, and they'll come into, you know, like 4 stitch, 5 stitch, 6 stitches per inch. This one here is set up for this one here. I'll use some leather. I've just got an old belt I was practicing sewing on. I'll use that to as a backing for my leather to stamp through, just so that you know we have that. I've got a small little spool of some waxed thread that we'll be using, and I've created myself a little, this is some old pigskin that I've created and sewn up for little finger guards. Whenever I'm pulling them, the thread will come down through here, and I can pull a little tighter. You don't want to pull too tight. Well, I've got 2 pieces of leather here. For video's sake, I'm just going to use 2 scrap pieces here, and I'll show you how to do a saddle stitch. Prepping this piece of this leather, we'll start by measuring this out at about 3/16 of an inch today. You can go 1/8, you can go a lot further if you choose. We'll start by going to the edge of the leather here, and we'll put a light impression on the leather, and then we'll flip it over. We'll do the other side. This is going to give us a line in the leather to use our stitching wheel. We're going to line one of the teeth off the edge of the leather, and then the rest of them we're going to follow the line with a little pressure down on the leather. Try and stay right into the line that we just scribed with the dividers. If it doesn't look like it did a very good impression, you can come back and do this again, and then we'll do this on the other side also. Again, now, you know, we don't need to have to do that on that side. Anyways, we'll do this so that way we know what side we're starting on. So now you'll see that you've got these holes here. There's going to be a stitch in each one of those. You use your diamond awl. And then you've got a line here on the other side. You probably can't really see it, but it's there. And then whenever you're using your diamond stitching awl, you'll come through, you'll hit one of the holes, punch it through, and you're going to want to make sure the other end is lining up here. Once you get it through, and then you'll do the stitching. Let's thread our needles. Okay. I've got a piece of thread here. This is the wax thread that I showed earlier. And it being waxy, it's got, you can straighten it. These are harness needles. These are definitely harness needles. They don't really have a sharp point on them. They're kind of blunt. I don't know if you can see that. It's blunt, and they've got an eye like a regular needle. This is a much bigger one than I would normally use, but I'm just going to show you how to set up your needles. Pull it through there. Pull a couple inches out of here. Come up about 1.5 inches. And then you're going to want to go right through about half of the thread. Then you're going to want to slide this up, pull this through, and then get both of them and pull on them. And run your finger down. There you go. Got the little tail. Now we'll get the other side. We'll do the same. Thread it through the eye. Pull some thread through there. Of course, I'm a little shaky. There we go. Again, we've threaded the thread through the eye of the needle, and then we've stabbed the thread with the end of the needle, and we're getting about half of it. Then we just kind of pull that all the way down and then pull back. Both of them on one continuous piece of thread. And it should be somewhere in the area of probably 4 to 6 times. I like a little bit more thread to work with than the actual length that you're stitching. Alright. Let's get that thing put in a stitching pony and get going. Right. Now that we've got our leather prepped, our needles threaded, we're going to get our stitching pony here. In this case, because I'm going to do it on a table and my table's a little wobbly, I've got a clamp here. I'm going to clamp it down to make it more secure. And then we're going to mount our material up. I think that's good. Alright. Remember, we've got our stitches, our actual marks here, the little dots. Then the other side we have our line. Let's line our leather up, and we're going to spread our stitching pony apart, and we're going to line it up in our little stitching pony here. This is just a simple little wood device. You can make one of these yourself. You can pick them up at Tandy, a lot of the leather places, online, several places. It does move this direction for comfort. Well, my thing needs to be tightened down a little bit more. Anyways, line your leather up the way you want it. Make sure you get it in here. You don't want it up too high. You don't want it down too low. So you're going to kind of line these up, because you're going to go in here and back this up, and you're going to push your awl through to create your holes. And you know, alright. Yeah, for the video. Okay, then over here On this side, you'll see, just kind of give it a little tight. Doesn't have to be too crazy as long as our leather doesn't bounce up out of there. It does have an adjustment in here. I'm not trying to sell the stitching pony, just kind of let you see a little bit. Let's get started. Put my little finger things here on. They help just pulling the thread. I'm kind of a wimp when it comes to that. Anyways, I've got little deals on. I've got my sewing diamond awl, and then my needles. It's been a little while since I've did this, but we'll start. You always want to try to hold your awl in such a way that every time you poke this, you want it to be, there's like little flat spots. Make sure that it's in the same direction all the time. And then of course, poke straight in. And once you pull that out, I'm going to start from this side. Pull this through. Once you get through, then you're going to put this in here and pull your thread to make sure that your needle isn't going through the center of this. Once you get that, I like to give it a twist forward, and then now you see I grab it underneath of this, and that's where, that way it doesn't cut. And then we're going to do the same thing over and over. Be real careful, work it through your leather, get through it. Make sure that you go straight through. And you do the same thing. I'm going to start over here on my right side, come through with the needle, like this, then pull through, see. And it takes a little while because I get all fumble fingers and stuff. I try to place my needles in a certain way all the time, and then keeping your diamond awl where you can do it. And it just takes a lot of practice. Here again, start in the little hole that's over here. Back up your back. Now, if you're worried and you, like I was when I first started, I would poke myself all the time. Get yourself, of course, a smaller piece of leather than this, and put it this way, up against this, and then do your poke through. And you can poke into that and then pull your awl out and do your sewing. Here, pull that through. Here I am, all fumble fingers again. I like pull through like that, and then give your thread over here a little tuck. Roll it. Again, make sure this, I look at the one side, and then I also got like little flat parts on my awl here. You'll see I've got this. If I get real tough leather, I'll actually use it and shove, you know, the back of the needle into this. It's just a little thing that I had did. I don't know if a lot of other people do it, but this leather is actually pretty soft and easy to work with. So I pull that through. And yes, you can see this becomes, oh, I need to go up and over that. It gets actually kind of tedious. And you give it a little snug. Not anything real. Alrighty. I moved it forward, continued to sew here. Wanted to show you, of course, the continuing of finishing your threads up here. I don't remember if I showed you how to start or actually even to finish. Got another thread here, so okay, this is the last stitch and the end of this. Push through. Bring this one through. And this is tucked right in front of that. And then I'm going to pull and I do my last part. Now to finish this off, we won't need it all, but what we'll do is I'll bring this one here over and go right through this other end. Bring it through the hole and lay this up on top, but don't pull it tight yet. Then this one, you'll take it up and over. Yeah, I gotta kind of watch how you're doing it there. And bring it through. Then I'm going to lay that right next to one another. And then we're going to work these together to make a nice little finish. We'll snug it up tight. And then we'll take this, cut our thread off, both sides, and then if you've got a lighter, you can give this a little burn and it'll just a little bit of heat and it'll shrink right up. Here's our leather that we just finished up sewing. Yeah, it's not too bad. You can tell I haven't stitched for a little while. That's what makes it happen. Let me show you. I've got our stitching wheel here. This just makes the marks in the leather. We can use this also just by rolling down the sides of our thread ever so lightly, and it helps, as you can see, it kind of helps straighten our stitch. Just when you do this, you want to be a little careful. It'll straighten the stitch up. You can do that on both sides. The back side's probably a little more important because of the when you shove that awl they're kind of on some of this chrome tan anyways, it kind of puts a little crack inside of it if you look at it real close. Make sure you get those little spurs on this wheel lined up with the holes of your stitching, or else you're going to have some other stuff. Anyways, there you go. Here we've got a purse. We've already stitched the back and everything, but for the video purposes I wanted to be able to sew and stitch the front on here. We're going to do it by hand. We're going to start out by getting our dividers, and we want to turn around and come along here, and again I've got this at about 3/16 of an inch, and I'm going to create a little line here that I'm going to follow with a set of pricking irons. Alright, I've got a piece of leather, and again it's just an old belt cut out, and I did some practice stitching on it. Makes for a good backing. I'm going to place this just underneath the leather, which has the front of this unit and then the back. We've already placed our line here. Now I'm going to take my stitching chisel here, and I'm going to put one prong just in front of the edge of my leather, and then the others right on the line. Then I'm going to hold it up. Let's see if I can get here and not be in the way. And then I'm going to... Well, this takes a little time because it's a little difficult. Now the next set, I'll line the very first prong and then follow the rest down through there. And yes, if you've got like an 8-prong or a 6-prong, makes this process go a little quicker. And this is just an old ruler. You'll do this process all the way around the area that you need to stitch. When you come to some real tight turns or curves, you'll possibly not use this 4-prong or 4-tine. You'll start going down to a 2, and it's the same process. You'll go 1 and then make sure that you'll go into the 1-prong will be into the hole, and then the other one will be lined up on the line. If you get into some really tight areas, then of course you're going to have to pay attention, because this is flat and it's a diamond shape just like the others. Then you're going to actually need to place these on that. Now, if you get into an area like that, here again, lay your stitching wheel down and make your marks in the holes, or in the line that you had made with the dividers. That way your spacing will be the same. And then you would go like this. Actually, here, let's go ahead and do 1 or 2 of these. Let's see, there you go. Make sure that you hold the, oh, got stuff sticking in my maul here. It's real crucial that you pay attention to the direction, because it's flat this way and it's the diamond shape, and to continue following everything that you've got here. Alright, with that saying, I'll go ahead and finish doing this and we'll get started sewing on it. We've got our purse, all the stitching holes put in, already done with the stitching chisels, pricking irons. I've got my thread, and it's a long one. I went about 4 times the length that I'm gonna sew. Got my needles started. We'll start by coming in here. Actually, I want to start from this side. It's just one of my and what we'll do, you probably won't be able to see this in the film, but I need to take both needles together like so, and then pull till I get the center. Sorry about that. Alright, now I pulled them together. I've got center there. It's the only thing I don't care for doing long runs of sewing. Now that I've got that done, I've pulled it to where everything is centered, like so. I'm going to take the first one over here. These holes actually go all the way through now, so it's not, you don't really need the stitching iron. And we'll pull this up. And I'm going to go over the side like this. Take the other one, the one that was in my left hand, getting started here. Seems to be a little difficult today. And I'm going to put my loops over the end here, or the side. Put them together and then give it a little tug. Now grab our needles and we'll do, that kind of bugs me. Anyways, then I'll start from this side here again with my right, pull through, start my left, make sure that it doesn't get the thread, do my turnover, there's a lot of thread here to be messed with. That's getting it started. And then pull it tight and do the same thing over again. Start from our back, pull through, okay, push that through, make sure it's not stuck in the thread again. Now there is a way that you can use shorter pieces of thread and prevent from messing around with all this, the long piece of thread. But I didn't want to get into starting off with that and learning to mend a piece of thread in the middle. We'll leave that for a later video. And as you can see, it's a little time consuming, but it comes out really nice. And then of course you can be pretty proud of what you've accomplished with doing all of it by hand. Shorter the runs, quicker it is, of course. And you'll get the feel for how tight you pull this. And you want to make sure that you do the same thing over and over. And if you do anything different, your stitch will not look the same. You'll see where you've actually changed your rhythm. And then snug it up again. I'll turn this thing around to the other side so that you can see the other side. Here's our stitches there. Yes, it takes a while. Anyways, everyone, here we are. We're right towards the end. Still doing the same method. And I think I added a little more thread to my rig here than I really needed. But I've kept the same stitch the whole way through. We're coming up to the end. And let's get this finished up. A few more threads here. You really need to decide, you know, like I started this one out where I took my little finishing loop or finish or starting loop to tie the stitch in. Really didn't need to do that where I looped over when I first started, because of the type of stitch, which is a saddle stitch. Not really needed when you start out, but it's needed when you finish so that you can tie it, you know, to where it doesn't come undone. But I like doing it, and I like doing it for the reason of it matches my finish stitch. Excuse me if I'm getting in the way there. This last hole is... Alright, now we're coming through. This is the last hole for the stitch. I want to make sure I do this. It's done just the same way as we kind of did the very first one. Yep. Okay, I've got that stitch made. we're going to want to turn around and do the loop. So I'm going to bring this one in my right hand over to the left side and go through. And I've got this loop coming up, but again, I don't want to finish that one off tight yet. Now I'm going to take what's in my left hand. I'm going to go over and go through the right hole, the right side. And there we go. We're going to bring it up in here just like the very first one. Take our time pulling these up so that they line up. It's kind of hard to see when I've got my big old hands in the way here. Now once you get them lined up, you give it the little snug, and then grab your knife and give it another little snug there. Cut it there and cut it there. Alright, as you all see, that I've got another 2 pieces of scrap leather in here again. I wanted to show you one more method of ending the stitches. I showed you where we loop over the leather material. In that case, it gives a lot of added strength to that finished joint. This will do the same also. It's just if you don't want that loop on the outside of your thread, I'll show you how you should end your thread. Basically, it's called a back stitch. And at this hole right here, or actually one more, and we'll start it. Okay, right on the end hole here. Okay, we finish our actual knot. Okay, now that's the last hole. To finish up this stitch, what I would do is take the same way, the same method I've been sewing, and come back one hole. Push it through, pull it out, and then I'm going to take the one that was my right hand, and here's my left hand. It's going to be your opposite. And do the same thing as a stitch coming backwards. And you'll probably want to pull just a little tighter. And a good idea is to go up back. You know, everybody's got their own thing. I like going back about 2 stitches. And as you're going through the holes coming back, sorry about that. As you're coming through the holes coming back, it will get tighter. So there's going to be a little more effort there. Alright, as you've seen, we actually ended up here. We came back 1 stitch, came back 2 stitches, and I did the same knots that I did coming to the end. The same stitching. And at this point here, again, you can cut these off. I like trying to cut them kind of close. Some people will cut them close and then they'll take like a cigarette lighter or a little heat of some sort, and they'll melt the little ends. But when I cut them pretty close, you don't really see the ends on that. You'll see the end on this one here a little bit right there. But then you can take this piece, lay it on the table, and take a hammer or something hard. You could actually take your maul and roll it back and forth on the stitching to set your stitching down in there a little deeper. Alright everybody, well, as I promised you from a video in the past, I'd show you how to do some of the hand stitching. is basically saddle stitching. There's several different stitches. There's a running stitch, there's a whip stitch, there's a saddle stitch, and there's plenty others out there. You'll find a lot of leather books, instructional books, that will show you plenty others too. The saddle stitch, the reason I chose it's probably one of the more common stitches that the leather workers nowadays use in the majority of all the products that they make. Anyways, we did a couple pieces of just scrap. I showed you how I'd start over the end and then finish it on that end. I like that type of finish on something like this because it makes it a lot more sturdier because there's pressure being pulled this direction. If you're not in that, you don't have that issue, the actual back stitching 1 or 2 stitches work really fine and actually looks really well too. I showed you both using the stitching awl. I've also showed you using the pricking irons or stitching chisels, whichever they truly are called. And I showed you some of the basic tools that are needed for the stitching. I hope everybody's enjoyed. Please stay tuned to my channel. I've got plenty of other videos coming up here soon. Give me thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe if you like, and add a comment at the bottom. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.